Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov Chess channel and welcome back to the Airthings Masters in 2022. So yesterday probably you have heard what happened. We had really a historical moment. Rameshbabu Praggnanandhaa, the top prodigy from India, managed to win the game with the black pieces against the current world champion Magnus Carlsen. I think it was such an important moment because sometimes we see Magnus Carlsen losing also many games in particular tournaments, and it's not the problem that Magnus is losing some games, but Magnus is losing many times some games when he's going into some dubious lines, so when he makes maybe a huge blunder. But this game is a little bit different, I think, because Rameshbabu Praggnanandhaa played really an outstanding and amazing game. When you put now the PGN into the current stockfish version, it will show you that basically Rameshbabu played only one mistake through the whole game, which is really wild. We have here a rapid tournament and it's really hard to play accurate games, so that's why I think it's a huge accomplishment. Of course, Rameshbabu Praggnanandhaa played maybe not such a good tournament. He didn't reach the quarterfinal stage, but it's a huge moment, I think, for him that he won the game against Magnus, and he can build his career on this game because he knows now that he can do it. He has to improve, of course, in some segments of the game, but I think it was a very important moment for him. So let's check out now the game. As I said, it is really a brilliant game. As I said, it's not a game where Magnus is making several blunders and maybe is choosing to play maybe sort of a King's Gambit game, or he's playing maybe a bad Alekhine defense or something. No, he played here really a symmetrical Tarrasch defense line, which I think is playable for both sides, and that's why this one was even more impressive. So let's check out now the game. So d4, we have knight to f6 by Rameshbabu, we have c4 by Magnus, e6, knight to f3, and d5, the Queen's Gambit decline. After move knight to c3, we have now the brilliant move c5, and I like here Rameshbabu Praggnanandhaa's move because he's already saying, I'm not scared, I will play an open game with you, I'm challenging your center immediately. And we have started recently on my YouTube chess channel to follow this Tarrasch defense for white and from black. I really wanted to cover it because I think it's a popular opening now these days. Maybe some of us who don't like to play it because it sometimes gets too open, but if you want to use it as a surprise element, you can use it. So here's the link of our Tarrasch defense series. Check it out if you want to have maybe a secret weapon against d4. So here c5 play by Rameshbabu. So the center can get open many times. Most of the times basically white is playing the move c takes d5, after e takes d5, g3 would be sort of a main line. But here in the continuation of the game, Magnus Carlsen played this semi-Tarrasch system with the symmetrical variation with the move e3. We have now really a symmetry, and Magnus is saying, okay, we will trade off some pawns in the center, but I will play a fast development because with the move bishop e3, of course the next couple of moves will be bishop to e2 or bishop to d3 and then kingside castling. So okay, white is always a slight inaccuracy in this symmetrical systems because white is simply up one tempo in the beginning. So here we have knight to c6 normal development, of course, with the knights. We have c takes d5, after e takes d5 we have now bishop to b5. Now the game is basically centered around the square e5. You see many of these pawns, the knight, of course, the bishop indirectly are aiming against the e5 square, and that's exactly what you should do here from white's perspective. You are battling for the e5 square and also, of course, for the c5 because that's the direction of the attack. But why black is trying here, of course, to occupy the e4 square and also the c4 square. So these are the clear targets for black. So here in the continuation we have now c takes d4. Very important move, I think, for Rameshbabu because he's also undermining a little bit the pressure in the center, because if you play something like bishop to d6 immediately, then I think in the near future we can expect some ideas. D takes c5, bishop to c5, and then you could be left maybe with an isolated pawn in the center of the board. So that's why this is a normal choice by Rameshbabu. We have c takes d4, we have e takes d4, bishop to d6, we have castling, and now castling also by the young prodigy. So we have now h3. This is now a prophylactic move where here Rameshbabu does the same, because what you don't want to get, okay, maybe you can get it and you will not lose the game immediately, but it's, I think, an uncomfortable game if you allow your opponent here sort of a pin bishop to g4, then you could lose a little bit the battle around the square d4. The same, of course, could happen also for black, so bishop to g5 could happen, and then the d5 would be a clear target of white's attack. So that's why both players played really this beautiful prophylactic moves. Rook to e1, we have bishop to f5. As we said, Black's goal is here sort of an e4 square there. I think Rameshbabu is preparing an outpost. On the other hand, Magnus is also trying the move knight to e5. So we have now knight to e5 immediately here by Magnus Carlsen. Rook to c8, protecting now the knight on c6, and now bishop to f4. We have rook to e8. We have rook to c1. You see, this game is more and more centered. Both players are simply getting the pieces towards the center. No one wants to make a decision immediately. No one wants to clarify the center. No one wants to, I think, release the pressure a little bit in the game. Who release the pressure immediately, I think, could have a comfortable game. So that's why they're teasing a little bit each other here. Really powerful centralized game here by both sides. So queen to b6 was played now by Rameshbabu Praggnanandhaa, and it's, I think, one of the critical moments of the game, because here I think okay, maybe you didn't win the war immediately, but I think here Rameshbabu won the slightly battle here in an opening stage, because he's challenging now the bishop on b5 immediately, and you have to, I think, here react with the move bishop to c6, because if you play here knight to c6, you see then bishop to f4 comes also with a counter attack here against this rook on c1. So that's why this knight to c6 is not working. So basically Magnus Carlsen has now to take out with the bishop. And when we watch now the position, black is continuing the game with the bishop pair, which is, I think, a good position now for Rameshbabu. He is continuing now with the bishop pair, but has, of course, a weakness. We can say it's the backward pawn on c6, and okay, we can also say that he has here maybe a weak square on c5. Whenever you play chess, you're playing on your opponent's weaknesses. We can agree, I think, that obviously Rameshbabu has here c5 square weakness and also c6 pawn weakness, but I like the bishop pair because this position can get open, this position can get dynamic, many things still can happen. So as I said, the bishop pair is perfectly fine. The engine gives here equal chances for both sides. I think it's playable for black and for white. So here after move bishop b takes c6, Magnus challenges now the queen, but actually this move is helping out here Rameshbabu. He's playing simply queen to a6, and the queen is maybe in the beginning not on a bad square, but the queen from this square can come into the game very easily. So the queen is a long range piece. When something gets cleared, the queen will fastly come into the game. So it's not a problem to have the queen at least secure for a while. Now on a6, in the later stage of the game, the queen will come there. So here rook to e3, and probably Magnus Carlsen should have gone with this move, knight to c5 immediately, attacking the square, maybe even sacrifice here the pawn on a2, but at least now Rameshbabu would be challenged here with his two knights. These two knights, I think, are really unpleasant to face. If you flip a little bit the board, if you could just imagine, let's flip the board, imagine you're having this position and both of these knights are attacking you. Although you took a pawn, I don't think that you would feel so comfortable in the game. So that's why maybe it was simply time for Magnus to occupy now the square, but he played now the move rook to e3, which gave now Rameshbabu a beautiful opportunity to play active chess. Here, as we said, Rameshbabu immediately occupies the weak e4 square, and now we have reached again one of the critical moments of the game. Here an opportunity, what Magnus could have done is maybe to play the move knight to d3. Many times you play this maneuver, knight to e4, knight to d3, knight to c5. That's a common maneuver in Queen's Gambit Decline, the semi-Slav structures and similar stuff. These maneuvers are really common, and I played it several times, just maneuvering some pieces and occupy the weak c5 square. But actually in this position, this maneuver is not working because of a stunning tactical shot that could have happened. This wasn't played in the game, but I wanted to show how tactically rich this position can be here. Knight to f2 would be really thick and brutal move, and here you have to take rook to e8. For instance, rook to e8, you take here, king takes f2, but now bishop to d3. Now the bishop is hanging, you have to react bishop to d6, and it seems so that the black is losing because black has lost a piece. But now with rook to e2, the game becomes really wild. We have here king to g3, the only move that white can play, and now bishop to e4. Look at this, rook to g2 is a serious threat. You have to bring the knight into the defense, knight to c3, but now rook to g2 anyway, and after king to f4, you have to even play with your king towards the center. Now queen to c8, you see, after something like knight takes e4, c4, d takes c4, king to e4, queen to e6 is, I think, simply winning the game. So it's really a wild position here for the world champion. So as I said, knight to d3 would be, I think, tempting, but Magnus played now the move f3, which again wasn't sort of a move that helped him out. Now Rameshbabu Praggnanandhaa simply plays knight to g5, and the idea about this move knight to g5 is very clear, because first of all, with the move knight to e6, we have here sort of a counterattack against the bishop on f4, and also against the weak d4 pawn, but we have also the control of the c5 square. So I think that Rameshbabu Praggnanandhaa tricked again a little bit here Magnus, because the only good move that Magnus actually has here is bishop to g5. You have to get rid of this knight, and then afterwards, here after h takes g5, you have to, I think, occupy the weak c5 square. So maybe this was the only way to hang on to this position. But Magnus Carlsen plays rook from e to c3. He's trying now to play against his backward pawn on c6, which is, I mean, many times a normal idea, but here Rameshbabu Praggnanandhaa plays a brilliant move, queen to b7. And you see now you have to play bishop to h2, because the bishop is a little bit loose on the board. We have said knight to e6 is coming, then the bishop is, as I said, really endangered, and then there are even some tactical possibilities with knight takes d4, and then you don't have any more the support of the e5 knight. The rook and the bishop are attacking the square. So for instance, if you play something like b3, let's see now, knight to e6, you have to retreat, and now even with bishop to a3, for instance, your rook is trapped. You could also try here something like knight to c5 to counterattack, but now bishop to c5, rook to c5 is again not working, because here knight to e6 is the main move. We would have a fork against the bishop and the rook. So if you take, of course, with the pawn, then here the pieces are hanging. So really weird position. Queen to b2, for instance, in this position would be a possibility. So too many possibilities, I think, here for Rameshbabu. Magnus didn't play really here his best game. After queen to b7, here he played bishop to h2, but now knight to e6 again. This beautiful maneuver. We have knight takes c6, and from this point on, Rameshbabu Praggnanandhaa has a comfortable game. Now he had even the opportunity to win the game immediately, but unfortunately he missed this big chance. He should have played here, and that was the only inaccurate move by Rameshbabu. He should have gone he played here knight to f4, but he should have gone here simply bishop takes h2. Bishop takes h2 wins the game immediately. I'm a little bit sad that he didn't play that, because I think this would be a perfect game. When you really put PGN into the Stockfish engine at home, it will show you that really Pragg played here really an outstanding and brilliant game. Bishop to h2 would be winning immediately, because king to h2, knight to f4. The idea is clear. We have here weakness on e2. When one of these rooks come on the second rank, you see the support. The problem is now you cannot kick away the knight with the move g3. Bishop and knight are covering this square, so as I said, this knight cannot be kicked away anymore. You could maybe try some ideas like knight to e5 to lock somehow the e file, but now with rook takes c3, rook takes c3, f6, the knight has to go away. Now rook to e2, look at this position, the position is falling apart. Even if you protect maybe with knight to e3, then queen to f7 with queen to g6 is coming into the game. There is not a good way anymore to protect everything. So really outstanding, brilliant attacking possibility for the young prodigy. But as I said, unfortunately, instead of this move bishop to h2, he played knight to f4, which was a little bit of a different mover. Probably he thought of again this idea, rook to e2 or knight to e2, but it's a little bit too slow, because Magnus now locks the file. Knight to e5, we have bishop to e5, d takes e5, and now knight to d3. Okay, this is now an equal game. Rameshbabu Praggnanandhaa missed his chance to win the game immediately. Now he still has an equal game. It's nothing wrong with his position. This knight on d3 is very powerful. What we can notice is also that we have a powerful pass pawn on the d file. We have here also the pressure on the b file. So it's not a bad position still for Praggnanandhaa. So we have here rook takes c8, rook takes c8, a couple of trades on c8, bishop to g3, and now d4. So Rameshbabu is saying, okay, maybe this is an opposite card bishop's endgame, but I have a pass pawn that worries, I think, now white in the continuation of the game. Magnus has now a really serious positional problem. So b3, we have queen to c6, queen to d2, and now king to h7, improving first the position of the king, king to h2, and now bishop to g6. Very pragmatic moves here by Rameshbabu. He's fixing first his pieces, brings them on the best square, secures the king. He knows that nothing can go wrong immediately. He will find one particular moment when it's time to push the pawn. Now he's settling down, he's slowing down the pace of the game. Really, it's almost that we're watching an experienced, maybe top grandmaster that is 40 years old. Now I think Rameshbabu settled here and hopes for a really good position with this pass pawn on the d file. So queen to a5, we have queen to c1, we have queen to a7. Here Rameshbabu is saying, okay, you can take the pawn, but my pawn on d4 is now the most important thing. So queen to e3 now comes again a critical moment of the game, because there is now only one way to protect everything, because what you want to stop is actually this pawn to come to d2, and in order to make that to happen, you have to play knight to b6 and then knight to c4. So let's see, for instance, first of all, queen to a5, you have to cover this square on d2, and for instance, if black prepares now to push the pawn, let's see, queen to e1 or maybe something else, then knight to e2 would be sort of an opportunity to keep the tension. But now with knight to b6, finally you have to protect the d2 square. For instance, if you trade off some pieces, now you try maybe something like d3, but now with knight to c4, I think that white is holding the position, maybe something like queen to e2, but now with queen to f4, this should be probably a draw. So you can also, instead of this move queen to a5, then afterwards you can also try some ideas, knight to b6 immediately, and then with the same idea, knight to c4. That was the only way for Magnus Carlsen to keep himself in the game, but unfortunately he played knight to c3 instead of knight to b6 or queen to a5, and he basically is standing now in his own way. He cannot protect anymore the d2 square. When the pawn is coming on d2, then it's really an unpleasant game, and the pieces are dancing a little bit here around Magnus Carlsen's king. So the queen, the knight, and the bishop can be included into the attack, and it's simply now too much to handle here. Rameshbabu plays a brilliant move, knight to f4. We have knight to d1 attacking the queen, queen to d2, knight to f2. So Magnus is trying now to get the pieces into the defense, but it's a little bit too late. Here we have knight to e2 attacking the bishop, h4, and now queen to e1 is also threatening a very annoying check. Queen to g1, then bishop to f5, very dangerous. Now queen to d7. Magnus is trying now to cover this potential bishop to f5 move, but now knight to g3. Anyway, here by Rameshbabu we have queen to d4, because king takes g3 is not working because of this check. Queen to e5, very nice tactical shot here by Rameshbabu. If you cover yourself, if you go to h3, then of course bishop to f5 is simply winning the game. So after move queen to d4, you see Magnus Carlsen lost a piece, and here Rameshbabu Praggnanandhaa played brilliant move again, knight to f1. We have king to h3, knight to e3. Now the knight is hanging, and here after move queen to b2, again a beautiful move, bishop to c2, cutting off the connection between the queen and the knight, and there is not a good way anymore to defend the position, even if you try here something like, I don't know, knight to g4. Let's see this line. If you try maybe to challenge this knight, it's not possible because you get this one, queen to h1, now queen to g2. It's simply winning the game. You can maybe try king to f4 to escape with, but now with even knight to d5, it would be even a checkmate. So queen to d4, if you play, of course, then you lose here in this position, then you lose the knight on f2, and black would then have 2 extra pieces. So great game by Rameshbabu. I really enjoyed it because, as I said, you can be the judge of this game if you really put now this PGN into your stockfish analysis at home. It will show you that Rameshbabu in a rapid chess game against Magnus Carlsen, the only inaccurate move, or we can call it really as a mistake, that he played was this move, knight to f4. As we said, bishop to h2 would be immediately winning for the young prodigy, and it would be one of the best games probably of the year. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game like I did. I really enjoyed it. It gives, I think, here a beautiful moment now for the current chess world. I think it's very important to know what will happen after Magnus Carlsen's career. There are many great players, Alireza, Rameshbabu Praggnanandhaa, many Indian players can make progress in the chess world. We have also Andrei Sipenko, Vincent Keimer. I'm sorry if I'm leaving anyone out, but the the chess future, I think, has something to offer for sure, and I'm really curious what's going to happen in the next maybe 5-10 years in the chessboard. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game. I really enjoyed it. If you want to see more games from this current event, check out my coverage so far. Here are some games that we have analyzed before, and if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.